Dad came home. They both started shouting at me and told me to stop lying and dragged me to school and made me apologize to the teacher. I was 7 year old. I felt like everybody I trusted and loved had turned against me and had sided with my enemy effectively. And I say it now with a smile on my face because I've done so much work on this, but at the time it destroyed me. It absolutely destroyed me. I went from the happiest carefree kid who used to chat to everybody to I didn't speak for 3 weeks. I refused. I went mute. I locked myself in my room, and the only thing I can remember about it is laying on my bed kicking out at anybody who came near me.
Hi, Tim. Welcome to the show.
Hi, man. Thanks a lot. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Today, you are an accomplished international breakthrough specialist. You're a guide, you're a speaker, you're a mentor, but you didn't get here overnight. You got here after overcoming decades of depression, hopelessness, and feeling stuck. Tell us a little bit about how this all got started.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because no, it wasn't always that way at all. And I guess it started when I was a kid. I was very inquisitive and I always used to take my toys to bits and put them back together. I'll figure out how they worked. And that was generally how my brain worked. So I was looking forward to school big time. Come from a big family, come from a big government housing estate, lots of friends, it was good. And then I went to school and I found out within the first few sentences that it wasn't really about learning. It was about compliance and telling me to shut up and do what I was told. And I rebelled against that quite badly. So, long story short, I got to about 7 years old and I got a new teacher who made it quite plain this wasn't going to happen. He made it plain to the other kids that he would be easily wound up by them, let's say. So then the other kids started playing on this, and he went out of the classroom one day. This kid drew all over his t-shirt, came back in, and he went, "Who did that?" And he goes, "Tim did it." So the teacher, he was known for being a physical bully. He got sacked in the end. He come over and he grabbed me, picked me up out of my chair, dragged me outside and slammed me down on the floor and said, "Sit there till the next kid comes out." And I'm like, no. So I live next door to the school. So I ran home, told my mum. My mum said, "Sit on the set, wait for your dad to come out." Dad come out, and I thought, they're going to tell him. Now, to be fair to my mum and dad, I'd been playing up a lot, but I was making it very plain I didn't want to be there. Dad came home. They both started shouting at me and told me to stop lying and dragged me to school and made me apologize to the teacher. I was 7 year old. I felt like everybody I trusted and loved had turned against me and had sided with my enemy effectively. And I say it now with a smile on my face because I've done so much work on this, but at the time it destroyed me. It absolutely destroyed me. I went from the happiest carefree kid who used to chat to everybody. I always got the stranger danger chat because I was chatting to I went from that to I didn't speak for 3 weeks. I refused. I went mute. I locked myself in my room, and the only thing I can remember about it is laying on my bed kicking out at anybody who came near me. 3 weeks later, it turns out somebody told my mom they had witnessed it, and she was like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, but the damage was done." I was now severely depressed. I had anxiety. I was getting echoing voices in my head while I was awake and asleep. I was having nightmares. I just couldn't, I'd got uncontrollable rage, and I just didn't trust anybody. So they put me back in school, and as you can imagine, didn't have a great school, didn't enjoy that much. But I got through to about 16 and I'd figured it out. And then me and my mates were uptown. I was shouting about a little bit because I was a little bit mouthy when I was 16, and some kids did it and came over. My mate told them to F off, and then they chased us. And then by the time we got to end of town, there was about 25 of them. They chased us down and caught us down an alleyway. And they were like coming in on us and getting weapons out and things, and I just thought we were dead. And then one of them the ringleader looked at me and he just goes, "They're only kids, leave them." And they just walked off. So we didn't get attacked, but I ended up with PTSD then, and then I couldn't come out. So I basically led a tiny little life as a teenager and in my early 20s because I was so terrified of going out. Or I remember once I went round my mate's house and we used to walk across town to this bar together, and they'd gone and left a note on the door and said, "We had to leave. See you there." It's probably about 200 yards. It took me an hour and a half to get there because every time I saw somebody walking across town, I'd run and hide somewhere. I was just terrified all the time. Then I discovered alcohol, which kind of numbed that out a little bit and got rid of that fear. But I'm not really good at drinking. I'm a very cheap date, and I'm just not effective as a drunk, let's say. And but I was in bands and things, but I always had to play drunk. Then I discovered nightclubbing and discovered the hedonistic lifestyle and everything that went along with that, and ended up replacing alcohol with party drugs. Now, I was really good at that because that kind of unlocked my true self, but I was in control while I was doing it, and I could function and I could remember everything. So then within that space and that freedom, I suddenly grew really fast. I started off being a nightclub dancer, then again ended up getting a job as a DJ, which was my dream. Ended up playing all over the UK, played in Canada, and just like I just blew up. And then I witnessed myself being this amazing version of me. So I call that Tim Tom because that was my DJ name. But then Tim, so I remember playing in Vancouver once, played to a few thousand people, then came back home. And in front of them, I'm like, yeah, just loving it. Fully self-expressed. Got home. I run a team of 4 software engineers, and I can't run the meeting because I'm terrified of what they think about me. And these people are my friends, and I work with them all day, every day. So I had this huge gap between Tim, Tom, and Tim. And then I got to the point where I knew I couldn't carry this lifestyle on. And then my dad got sick. So I started coming home and looking after my dad. And that's where my journey began, because I'd already been to the doctors about it. And then one of my friends handed me a Tony Robbins CD, and I got introduced to personal development. So then I made my car journey on my mum and dad's, my university. And that kind of where I learned my trade, in the car, really. Driving home and trying to figure out, how do I get Tim Tom up to Tim without the drugs? And that was the kind of mission I took on, if you like.
There was incredible story. There was a distinct difference between the Tim that wouldn't be able to go 200 yards because of anxiety and stress,
Yeah.
and then Tim that is a party animal, whether it be alcohol and drugs.
Yeah.
How much time was in between these two versions of Tim?
Understand. So the party time was just like the first time I ever did drugs. It instantly went away, and I could.
And how old were you then?
I was 25, 24,
25.
25.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was the drugs that took away the stress and the anxiety.
Yeah. 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 100%.
What about the drugs do you think took it away? Because this is something you've been struggling with it at this point for 25 years, 25 minus 7, 18 years of your life, because it
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
happen in 18,
Yeah. Yeah. I
7, yeah?
don't know. It was just, it put everybody on a level playing field, and it opened everybody's heart. And it just, because there'd be people from all walks of life. There'd be thugs, gangsters, bouncers, and doctors, lawyers, nurses, you name it, on the dance floor.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter who you were, because it seemed to have that universal effect of just taking away everyone's inhibitions and
Yeah.
whatever holds
Sure.
them back. And then we could just be normal humans with each other. It was really empowering. And I knew, something in my heart knew that was me, that it wasn't false. I knew that was who I am, but I have no way of accessing that usually.
Yeah. That's what drugs and alcohol do for a lot of people. It takes away the addiction and allows them to be free. That's why it's so addictive.
Yeah.
So, what would happen when you're not, even during the time period when you are a party animal, when you are DJing, when you are clubbing, you're using recreational drugs to feel normal, to feel like
Yes.
yourself? What about the times of the day when you were not on drugs? Would you revert back to the old anxious self? Or would the
Yes.
confident, outgoing Tim still be there?
Maybe with my friends, maybe with my clubbing family, as I called them, because we all lived together in a massive big house at one point when I was DJing and stuff. And like inside that house, I was still Tim Tom. Even I'd taken on that as my identity. So aspects of it remained. But then, to give you an example, I was also building a software business with my friend at the time. I had to go to a networking meeting, and we went around the table and everybody had to say who they were and what they'd cut. It was like a mastermind kind of thing, and what help they needed. As it was going around the table, I was feeling sicker and sicker. And as it got 2 people away, I ran to the toilet and threw up, and I hid in the toilet until I knew it would have gone past me. So that, if that answers your question, it was like I still couldn't function. Anywhere where I felt judged, or like I might be judged, or might be got wrong, or might be misunderstood, because that was the kind of story I had running in the background, then I would avoid it like the plague.
So, was it the fact that you no longer wanted to rely on drugs to feel normal, and you wanted to feel normal all the time instead of just that specific amount of time? Was that the reason that kind of eventually pushed you over to personal development and leave the drug world behind?
What made me leave the drug world behind is one of my friends' heart stopped at a party, and we managed to get him going again, and everything was all right, but that terrified me. And I was like, we've gone too far. This has gone too far, because it wasn't pleasant at the end. It was getting horrible. And like I said, then my dad got sick, so I had the choice of I either help my mum and dad or I carry on. And I was just like, obviously I'm going to go and help my mum and dad. And I think that probably saved me in some ways. And then because I'd left that lifestyle, I had to focus on something new, and self-development just became my thing. I just became obsessed with that instead, because I needed something to take my mind off the fact I couldn't do what I've been doing for the last 10 years.
So, when you start delving into self development, there's so many angles to it, right? To personal
Yeah.
development. What was the part of it that you gravitated towards the most?
As a software engineer, I just wanted to take my software apart and understand where the bugs were and where how I worked, what created this behavior, what was depression. Because I'd been told by a doctor I'm depressed. I didn't even know what that meant. Of course, I did what a lot of people do, I think, when you're given the label, you go and research it and then you live into it a little bit. But then I was like, no, I'm not, that's not who I am. I know that's not who I am. I've seen who I am. I just don't know what's in the way of getting there. So my primary focus to start with was mindset. And I did 13 years of that, right? Because I did the Tony Robbins stuff. And then I knew he had based it on NLP. So I learned NLP. Then I did hypnotherapy, timeline therapy, Sedona method, landmark forum, read over 100 books, spent 50 grand on self-development. I went on every course going, every workshop, everything, anything. And it was before YouTube or anything like that. So it was like you had to dig quite hard to find this stuff. But I just became a geek. I'm always a geek at whatever I'm into. So I just became a self-development geek and I just got obsessed with it. But I was still getting nowhere really, because the underlying message was you need to learn to cope, right? You need to learn to cope and you need to learn to manage this situation. And I was like, I did not come here to cope. Just something in me, I'm like, didn't come to cope. There's got to be an answer. You've got to be able to figure this out. But I'll be honest with you, when I got to the end of the Landmark Forum series, the common thing I always was, while I was on the course, I was great. Like when I was at Tony Robbins, I was amazing. I was like, and I was always getting noticed by their staff and get asked if I wanted to work backstage or whatever. But then I'd leave it and go back to my normal world and I'd just come back down within a few weeks. And I said at Landmark Forum, this seems really different. But then I got a little bit exhausted because it was in London and I lived 3 hours away. So every week I had to go 3 hours there, 3 hours back. I got exhausted traveling backwards and forwards. So I ended up having a break for a few weeks. And as soon as I had a break, I came back down again. So I'm like, look, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this is who I am. Then popped round my brothers. My sister-in-law said, we've just hired this guy into our business and he's coached everybody. And I've got like a brand new team. I've never seen anything like it. And I've told him about what you're up to in the world and he wants to meet you. So long story short, I went on his course in London. It was 2 days. 2.5, Friday afternoon introduction, then Saturday and Sunday. On the way there, my friend had to drag me through the underground because I was so terrified of people and didn't like crowds and things like that. I was just like walking behind him, just looking at the back of him, trying not to look at all of this. Got into the course. It was with a guy called Tom Stone, and he said, first thing we're going to do is go inside and learn how to be quiet. And I'm like, good luck with that, because I don't know about a lot of people, but my head was just like all the time. Anyway, 5 minutes later, I'm sat there with a silent head, and I'm like, wow, okay, I'm listening. So then he said, I want you to think about something that terrifies you or triggers you or whatever. And I could never get that gang out of my head, especially when the corner does. And I could see the vision of this guy flicking. So I don't know if it was a knife or whatever, but he got something. And I used to see that all the time. So I couldn't go to football matches. I couldn't go to places where there were big crowds of people because it just reminded me of that. So I thought of that and he goes, notice where you feel it. So it felt like someone strangling me. So then he taught us a technique to release it. And then I released it. And then I just could not stop laughing. And he came over and he was like, you all right? I went, I can't stop laughing. And he's like, I went, what's wrong? And he went, you're so used to when you access that memory, you get that feeling that now it's not there. It just feels there's too much energy. So you're just laughing. He said, it'll calm down. So after about 20 minutes, he's think about that situation now. And I thought about it. I'm just like, there's nothing there. And he's welcome to letting go. And then we spent the whole weekend just letting everything go. I let go of the grief of my mum and dad. I let go of the stuff at school. I let go of loads and loads of things. I went out into London on the Sunday afternoon to go home. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, look at all these beautiful people. And I was like, wow. And I was like, the colors look brighter. The sound sounded sparkly and just alive. It just felt beautiful, like I've never felt. And I didn't realize, I don't know if you've ever had a nagging toothache and then you have the tooth pulled and then you're like, oh my God, that's been bothering me so much. I used to wake up wishing I hadn't, right? And that had been my entire life pretty much. I can't ever remember waking up excited or whatever. I pretty much wish I hadn't woke up. I woke up on the Monday morning happy and I was like, whoa. And I was like, oh my God, I've never felt like this when I wake up. Because I had woke up and I'd worked out a morning routine and this and that to do to try and get myself to cope and to manage. Woke up Monday morning, nothing to manage or cope with, gone. And it wasn't perfect. I still had some work to do, but comparatively, it felt incredible. And now that was 11 years ago. None of that stuff ever came back. And then I said to Tom, can you teach me this? So he's, yeah, so I went on his course and learnt this, and then went out on my own 10 years ago. After about 3 years, bumped into an old student that was a friend of mine on the course. Me and her had said on the course, I think we'll end up working together. Had a discussion. We dropped 95% of what he'd taught us and kept a little bit and designed some other stuff. We'd done exactly the same thing. So we decided to join forces. So that's Tracy Hamilton, who's my business partner. So we've spent the last 7 years designing what we call Trinity Coherence, which is our version of it, and other stuff that we've picked up along the way. And it's absolutely transformed my life. And I don't use that word lightly because it gets overused, but my life is just not. If you'd have told me what this was available back then, I'd have thought you were like pulling my leg, because I could not have imagined it. I always say I've been like from a living hell to heaven on earth, because that's what it feels like.
From an engineering vocabulary perspective, it's like you had this older operating system in your mind.
Yeah.
And you just got an upgrade, a major one, that
Massive.
completely changed the functionality of how
Yeah.
you're working inside and out. Tell us a little bit more about Trinity Coherence. Who is your ideal client and what do you do with them?
Our ideal client is somebody that knows in their heart that there's more to them than that's showing up, and somebody that's prepared to do something about it, because not everybody is. And this is not me doing it for you or Tracy doing it for you or any of our team doing it for you. We teach you how to do it and then hold space for you until you get good at doing it for yourself. So this is a self-empowerment system, right? It's not therapy. It's more like personal training for the brain, when nobody else can do your press-ups for you, right? No one else can heal you. Only you can heal you. But we've got a great set of tools that once you know how to do them for yourself, you can go and heal yourself. Now, not everybody can do it for themselves. Some people, it depends how safe you feel when you go inside and whatever. But our job is to help you feel safe and go inside. So I always say self-motivated people, because like I said, we're not going to do it for you. But if somebody's motivated, like I was so motivated when I got to that course, I'd invested my entire life in it at that point, all my money, all my time and everything for the last few years. So when someone comes along with the answer, I'm just going to run with it. And I spent 3 months once I learned how to do it, just working on myself and clearing everything up. So anybody with that level of motivation that knows there's something in them, they might have witnessed themselves sometimes doing something going, yeah, that's who I am. But then other times they're just like, oh, why did I say that? Why did I do that? That's not me. Because that was my experience. Just like when you know it's just not you showing up a lot of the time. Anybody like that. So typical people we work with are entrepreneurs, because they are self-motivated. They are doing something already, and they tend to push themselves up against limits. Often people with careers and that maybe don't, because they're shielded by the business and stuff. But when you put yourself out there personally, you have to press up against the self a lot. It's not called self-employed for nothing. It's like when you put yourself out there and you have to measure your direct value when you're asking for money and things like that, it tends to push up a lot more limiting stuff that's inside, if that makes sense. So that tends to be ideal. I know that's probably a little bit vague, but does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. We live day in, day out on our end of things with entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They are self-motivated, they are go-getters, but a lot of us, when we start out, there are a lot of doubts and confusions. And it isn't because necessarily of all of them are caused by us, but it's also because of the environment that we're in. No matter how motivated we might be, an unkind word from a friend, a doubt from a family member, a bad comment from a client that you're pursuing in the very beginning stages can almost have an impact like you had at a very young age, whether it be physical young age or entrepreneurial, proverbial young age. Those are the times when we are the most impact.
Absolutely. Especially if it's something that's important to you. Something that's important to you and you've got a certain way of looking at it, and then someone changes that, especially if they're an authority, it can just flick it inside you and just totally change your belief around that. And that's what we're really good at, is changing belief systems, changing the meanings people give things, changing the way people perceive themselves and their identity and all of that kind of stuff, because it just changes how you show up 100%.
So let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about some specific scenarios. If I'm an entrepreneur and I'm listening to this and I'm struggling with this, maybe we can give them some tidbits and bits of things that they can start working on. So one of the things that we realize happens a lot with entrepreneurs is that sometimes, like you said, they know they have more gas in the tank. They know there's stuff within them and they're not able to just pull it out, partly because they're scared. Because what happens is we all get used to a certain identity we have. And now when we think about going that next version of us, some of them get scared because they are now afraid of who are we going to become? What is it going to look to us? So how can they help tap into that potential that lies within them, but they're scared of bringing it out?
Okay, cool. So we have 3 steps to what we do with people. So number 1 is regulate. So we teach people how to regulate the nervous system. We then teach them how to resolve anything that dysregulates that. So they become a clear vessel, if you like. But then the next bit, will answer your question, is we get them to reinvent who they are. So I created an identity, and I always tell people to name it. Give it a name. So mine was King Tim, right? Which is more jokey than serious. If it's just like King Tim. So your identity is made up of beliefs about the meanings, the stories you tell yourself about the world, how you view yourself and your self-image in the world. So what I do get people to do is say to yourself, who do I need to become in order to be the person that I need to be to run this company, for instance, right? For instance, with me, I asked myself the question, who do I need to be in order for Rise and Shine to be what I want it in the world? So I thought, I'm not that thick skinned sometimes. I can let things get to me, especially if I'm passionate about it. So I was like, so I need a new belief. So I was like, what does thick skinned really mean? And I thought, it means if you're internally or externally referenced, really. If you're looking outside for reassurance and for validation and for somebody to just say everything's all right, you're vulnerable. So I was like, I need to be internally referenced. So I know that I believe what I'm saying and I don't need anyone to back me up. So I'm like, I am internally referenced is my belief. So I was like, what else do I need to believe? So I just went through, what would I need to believe in order for Tim to opt in that role? Then what I do is go and look for the evidence to back it up, because that's how we create beliefs in the first place. We make a decision. So imagine first time you meet a dog in your life, right? The dog comes up to you and licks your face and he's all out and you're stroking it and you're feeling all good. And you look up at your mum and your mum's stroking the dog and it's a lovely experience. You have a belief that dogs are lovely, right? If the dog bit you, you're going to have a different frame of reference, right? So then next time you approach a dog, if you think it's lovely, you're going to go to it with good energy, and you're a dog man that they pick up on your energy. So the dog's going to come to you and it'll be all excited because you're excited. And so it puts another table and another leg under your table of dogs are nice, dogs are nice. The kid who got bit will go up to the dog, probably really nervous, and then the dog feels nervous and it might bark or something, because then it reinforces their belief that dogs are nasty. And this is how we build belief systems. So if you know that, you can consciously choose something. So I chose I'm internally referenced. Then I wait for situations to come along that maybe would have wobbled me before, but now I'm consciously choosing to be internally referenced. So say one of my friends doesn't agree with something, I then go inside and go, it's okay, it don't matter, it's fine. You know what you believe, that's fine. And then the situation's different because I am defensive, I've not tried to argue and whatever. So that gives me an experience of me being internally referenced, which goes and sticks some evidence into that belief. And just do this all the time. Like, for instance, once upon a time, I was terrified of jumping on Zoom with a stranger. And because when you're coaching, you don't know what's going to show up. You don't know what's going to happen. I've done it so many times now. And I know that I'll always be able to know exactly what to do in that situation. So I've got 1,000 pieces of evidence underneath that now that said it'll be okay. So now I'm confident with that. And that's all it is. It's just making those decisions, then looking for the evidence. Because a lot of the time we're basing it on an old identity. And that may be from when you were at school. And it may be when you were doing something you didn't even want to do. I remember doing a job when I was about in my early 20s and I hated it and I was so rubbish at it. And everyone used to tell me I was rubbish at it and I was useless. When I left, I'd got to the point where I thought I'm just useless at everything. And then I got a job doing something else and I was really good at that. And then everyone told me I was really good at it. And then within a few months, I was just like, no, I'm really good at this. And it's like, with that plastic, with that ball, but it's to do that consciously, so it's to consciously create that identity that will be the perfect one for your business and just live into it. Because if you don't do it, that's happening anyway. That mechanism's happening anyway. So it's just to do it consciously. And that's what I'll tell people. If you want to change any of your programming, first thing you need to do is get conscious of it and consciously be aware of what you're doing and then choose something else. But again, much easier to do once you've regulated your nervous system and taken out, we call them emotional splinters. So it's often your emotional splinters that are creating the belief systems and everything that then make you have those false beliefs anyway. So it's to clear all that stuff out first. It's a much better idea, and then go and consciously create you. Because I remember watching Tony Robbins on I'm Not Your Guru, and I created this. I made this. because I knew what I needed to be. And it's the same thing. It's different ways of going about it, but I found that way works really well. We've done that with a lot of people, and it's to see them change that much. And they can't even believe it themselves half the time because they thought that's who they were, but that was just a version. Like you said, it's an upgrade.
So what about authenticity? Because a lot of people get stuck on this. They say, if I could invent this person, I could try to be that person, I could try to gather evidence, but that's just not me. I feel fake. How do
Mhm.
you tackle that obstacle, that mindset obstacle that people have?
By doing nothing in the mind, because you said the key word. I feel fake. That's a fake is a feeling. People talk about imposter syndrome all the time now. And it's that feeling is it's like the GPS to the problem. So this is what we teach people. We teach people how to speak the language of the body, right? Because that feeling will lead you to whatever you stored in your body that's generating that feeling, right? Because when I'm saying create that identity, I'm not saying don't be yourself. I'm saying create a best version of you. But if you can't access that because you don't even know what it is, maybe, or because you've got the false beliefs you've installed along the way to protect you, because it's the protection mechanism of the brain that creates the belief system in most people. So the way we look at it is emotions are like splinters. If you get a wooden splinter, big piece of wood comes along, hits you, breaks off, and goes inside. Now you keep people away from it and you stay away from it because it hurts. And us humans don't like pain. Give it a few weeks, it'll heal over. Now you can touch it, it's okay. But if someone came along and grabbed you right on top of it, you still jump because it's in there and it hurts. And it's maybe getting a bit infected by now. So emotional splinter. Emotion comes along, we can deal with so much of it. But when it gets more than we can deal with, this is what we label as a traumatic incident. So trauma is the response you have to the incident, but the traumatic incident is just more than you can deal with in the moment. So it could be a big thing like getting attacked or something like that, or an accident, but it might be just you've had a bad day, you've not got much capacity left, and then something happens. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but this energy has to go somewhere, so we shove it inside somewhere. Now we keep people away from it, we stay away from it, but again, it doesn't heal really. So when someone comes and presses you on it, so that something looks like it, sounds like it, smells like it, whatever it is, it reminds you of it in some way, it re-triggers it. But the unconscious mind doesn't understand time, so it feels like it's now. So you have the exact same response. So that's me. I would see somebody stood in a doorway walking across the town, and I'd have the exact same response as that day I was getting chased. And I'd have a panic attack and then couldn't function and whatever. And it's that mechanism. But it doesn't have to be that strong. It can be quite subtle, right? So then what do? By the thing we do to keep people away from it is to create programs. So programs in the ways of beliefs, meanings, and the stories we do tell about that. So for instance, I got stood up at school and screamed at by a teacher when I was 6.5 for answering a question, and she wrote it down wrong. So I just said, "Why have you written it wrong?" thinking it was a trick question, and she screamed at me in front of everybody until I cried, and then everybody laughed at me, and then I got told to stand in the corner and think about what you've just done. And I made a lot of decisions about school that day, and it was like, but one of them was, I'm never standing up in front of people again, it's not safe. So guess what? I installed a program in there about I've got social anxiety, so I couldn't do anything social, right? When I started doing this work and pulled that splinter out, I no longer need that program to protect me because there's no pain there anymore. So that program disappeared, and I was immediately able to talk in front of people, and I didn't have to do any work on it. So but your belief around whatever it is in your business will be connected to something like that. So it's not a mindset thing. It's a tuning into the innate intelligence in your body via the feeling level, because the feeling will take you over here. I say it's the sat nav to your splinter, or the GPS to your splinter, whatever what you want to call it. But it'll take you straight there, and you don't need to know because your body keeps the score, as the book says. But your body knows it all. So our job is to teach people how to tune back into that, because when you can tune into that, it automatically tells you where to go and fix things. And then with a few simple little techniques, you can just pull those things out. Then you'll find, I don't think that anymore. Or a favorite word of entrepreneurs is procrastinate, isn't it? I look at procrastinate as a posh word we invented. So humans don't like fear. Humans also don't like admitting they've got fear. So they invent a new word called procrastinate, because it's just, you're scared of something, so you're just not moving. But it's that resistance. It's that resistance inside that we work with, is to find out what's the resistance. Because if you've got no resistance, you'll take action. If you stand on your brakes in your car and floor it, it ain't going to go nowhere. You've got to take your foot off the brake. And that resistance inside of those stories and beliefs and everything will stop us moving forward. So then you can't create that identity. That's why I said we do those two things first. But if you are free, go and create the identity. Or if you're able to, go and create it all day. but it's just, that's the kind of level we work on, is to go that deep. Because when you take that stuff out, you don't, all those things I worked on for years and years and years just disappeared. Do you know what I mean? And it's effortless because we've got a belief underneath all of this. And that's it. Each and every one of us is powerful beyond measure. It's just our trauma, our conditioning, and the stories we tell ourselves about all that stuff that limit us. But any one of us could do anything. Look at what some people do in the world. It's incredible. But every single one of us could do it if you've got that range of talents. But most people can do way more than they're doing, me included. It's just the only limit is whatever's holding us back. And it's usually yours more than anybody else.
No, Tim, I live, eat, breathe the personal development world every single day because of my work and the
Yeah.
entrepreneurs and whatnot. Your take on approaching it is so different and so unique. And it's partly because you have suffered yourself and had to
Mm.
heal yourself. So your understanding of the topic about what works and what doesn't work is so much deeper than somebody who's just read a book or done a seminar. I always say that through suffering comes wisdom that just cannot be attained through books. And the
Yeah,
way
yeah.
you've lived your life, the struggles that you have faced, the real world, because you've tried it all. You've tried to help yourself for so many years. You have hands-on experience of learning, knowing what works and what doesn't work. So if anybody's listening to this and you're stuck in a place in your life but you really want a real person to help you through the real love understanding of not just helping others, but also having it gone through themselves, you're the man, Tim. You're the man.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit more about how audience can reach out to you, what final words of wisdom you have for them. If they are struggling with some of these mindset issues, what are the first steps they can do to free themselves?
Cool. Without meaning to big ourselves up, don't waste any more time. I wasted far too much time trying to figure this stuff out. What we've done with people, we've worked with about 1,600 people in the last 10 years, and the vast majority, and probably about 10 people out of that, we couldn't help. The vast majority of people, when you show them how to do it, it's so simple, and it's so powerful, and you get an experience of it straight away. It's not like I'd do, I remember doing hypnotherapy, and then afterwards they'd go, so you should be feeling this and you should be feeling that. And I don't know, not sure. We don't tell people anything. People tell us. But at the end of sessions, people are like, oh my God, I feel like a completely different person. Because when you shift that stuff, you are. You're you, right? And we don't teach people how to be, because how do I know who you are? All we do is teach you how to get yourself out your own way. Then you can be who you really are. And that's what our main course is called, Be Who You Really Are. So what I'd recommend is we do a 5-day to freedom workshop, which is to teach you the basic tools. It's in a group workshop on Zoom. It's only $49, right? And it just teaches you the basic stuff that I learned on that weekend course. And we run those all the time. And they're just so much fun because we approach this as fun. There's too much heaviness around all of this anyway. And we found when you have fun doing it, you let stuff go way easier, and it's never as bad as you think. And it's also, you don't need to know, because I didn't really know what was holding me back. And some people don't even know at all. Some people can't remember anything ever happening, and it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be big. It could be you got told off for drawing on the wallpaper when you were a little kid and it's before you remember, but somebody shouted at you for expressing yourself or something like that, so you made a feeling level decision, I'm never going to do that. It can be anything. Or like you said, it can be nothing. It can be just the pure fact that we all go through the mill. We all go through school where they're trying to shove you all into one box. We all get conditioned into work. We're all inside a system, if you want to get that deep, that limits us, limits our human expression. So there's always levels and levels, no matter where you are. So, and we also do discovery calls. So if you did want to do something a bit deep and a bit more personal, we're always happy to chat with people and see how it could affect you, because it works different for everybody and everybody's unique. So we have no fixed protocol, no fixed way of working. It's just we respond to what's ever needed. So discovery calls often good, because then you can find out what we could do for you or whatever. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I've
Well,
set
Tim,
up a landing page for your podcast,
okay.
which is just the riseandshine.com/PM. And on there's like contact details for us all. There's our website, there's the link to the challenge and everything else. So just come and say hi. We don't bite, and we're really friendly.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being on the show, Tim. There
Thank
are
you.
many people who are knowledgeable. There are many people who are wise. There are many people who have wonderful things to say. But when coupled that knowledge with somebody who's genuinely a good person, that's the vibe that I get from you.
Thank
You
you.
are here obviously because you have a lot of knowledge and expertise in the area, but you are also here because of the kind of person you are and the kind of heart you have. Now, back in the day, having struggled with whatever you struggled with, when you found freedom through what you had experienced and learned at that seminar, you could have moved on with your life. You could have
Mm.
continued to be an engineer. You could have done so many other things. But the fact that you decided in that moment that there are other people just like me who need this desperately, and
Yeah.
then took the information and made it even 100 times better and started Rise and Shine and doing what you're doing, your life, your heart, your passion, your commitment is a testimony to the kind of person you are. So it's been
Thank
an
you.
honor and a privilege being able to showcase your story and host you on the show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. And thanks for people for listening.